the number of lady judges being recruited is more than males. The average perhaps ranges from 40 to 70%. There is nothing so grievous or humiliating as a sexual harassment. A society may think that, well, women should do this. This is the best way a woman should behave in public, in private. You should wear this particular kind of dress. This is the most acceptable. And as far as male are concerned, obviously it is important to understand what makes a female counterpart uncomfortable. Today's function of launching this portal for filing complaints on sexual harassment by Delhi High Court is indeed a very important step. Though it looks like a small step, nevertheless, as we say, every journey, long journey has to start with the first step. Not that Delhi High Court has not done anything. Already much has been done, as has been explained by the previous speakers. But this is indeed a very important step for the purpose, for the pure purpose that it enhances confidentiality and confidence on the people apart from transparency. The Visakhapatnam judgment of 1997, which you all know, marked a new milestone in Indian jurisprudence on how law can be used not only for tackling social evils but also transform the society. As we all know, the triggering point was the rape of a social worker. However, the court proceeded to examine various facets of the problem, these impediments and various hurdles faced by women in workplaces, thanks to a group of public-spirited organizations and persons, individuals, which led the Supreme Court to lay down a detailed guidelines, as mentioned by Chief Justice also. One of the first, in fact, this used to be a classic example of how judiciary can fashion. And there, of course, a criticism also that the judiciary is encroaching upon the legislative field of the legislature. But as mentioned, all clarified again and again, that yes, if you are able to provide a basic framework, there is no harm for the court to lay down the ground, and it has become part of our jurisprudence. The courts continue to do it by issuing directions from time to time. This is an example of the reservation of women in Delhi Bar Council or various metropolitan cities. It is not an enactment by anybody. It all came from the courts also. So these are very progressive, constructive role played by the court. And we all know that, yes, mentioned also that it took a long time for the parliament to enact this act, which we shortly call POSH. A workplace should be a place of opportunity and accomplishments and creativity, not a place generating fear, anxiety. Workplaces must provide respect for dignity of the individuals and equal opportunity for all. Any such act which negates the conducive atmosphere for work obviously has to be forbidden, not tolerated. As far as women are concerned, there is nothing so grievous or humiliating as a sexual harassment. It demeans women, acts as a barrier to her creativity, slows down the efficacy, causing immense mental and physical trauma, which is completely antithetical to the ennobling principles of equality, liberty and justice, which form the core values of our Constitution. Therefore, this menace has to be tackled head-on. And it is from this perspective that lies the importance and significance of this act. And also it assumes importance from the fact that today, large number of women are joining and becoming valuable partners in a nation-building exercise, contributing meaningfully in all walks of life, not confined to traditionally considered suitable only for women, and which were exclusive reserve of the male. Just an example, today as we see in almost all high courts, in a matter of recruitment in a district judiciary, we see that the number of lady judges being recruited is more than males. The average perhaps ranges from 40 to 70%. In fact, I used to joke sometimes that the male species is going to vanish from Indian judiciary as far as the district judiciary is concerned. It is enormous contribution now played by women, not only in judiciary but all, even lawyers also. A large number of, as I see when I address the universities, I see a large number of girl students and they are doing wonderfully. Interns also, I just see the number of interns, I see the list. The female interns outnumber the males. So there is a paradigm shift going on, taking place. Therefore, it is incumbent on all of us to ensure that the workplace remains safe, secure, encouraging, not plagued by these insidious practices. It is not an easy task to do away with these practices, because the sexual harassment is not an act perpetrated by one individual on another. In fact, it is a result of a misogynistic, patriarchal, feudalistic ideas, male chauvinistic ideas which still prevail in the mind of many, who consider that the role of women to be confined only in the domestic sphere, which again I say is antithetical to our core constitutional values of equality, liberty, justice and dignity of the individual. Apart from this, since I am addressing in Delhi, but if you see the all India perspective, the cultural difference, the mindset still stark. Delhi perhaps represents a mini India. Today, all communities, all over the country, you find representation in Delhi, in all walks of life in Delhi. To that extent, Delhi is uniquely placed to act as a beacon, as a shining example of various activities, movements. In fact, as I can see earlier, the three high courts, the chartered high courts of Bombay, Calcutta, Madras used to be the leading institutions. Fourth also, Allahabad, sorry. But for historical reasons, now Delhi is coming in the forefront. Perhaps because it is located in the capital of the city. That's why the focused attention Delhi High Court gets is something unparalleled. From that perspective also, that the importance of Delhi High Court can be understood if we are able to develop this movement, strengthen this movement. And Delhi can be an example, certainly I feel, and the host of talented people in this city, I'm sure it is going to trickle down other parts of the country also. from my experience, this POSH Act, though talked about in all parts of the country, is something really not seeped in the system. There are very few high courts who have constituted and actively engaged in these various aspects of the redressal mechanism of the Act. There are many high courts where this hardly function, though it is there on paper. There is to hardly any complaint. Now, of course, one may say, if there is no complaint, one may assume that there is no such sexual harassment. That takes me to my student days when we had taught criminal law. The professor of criminal law, Dr. Professor Menon, he mentioned, see, in Bombay, the number of crimes reported is so much. Of course, I won't name that other city. But in this particular city, the number of crimes reported is this much. You think that that city, there is less crime in that city? Of course, there were different answers. And what is to be understood is that why the number of cases registered in Bombay is because perhaps they are more receptive, reactive, perceptive to the problems. There is more investigation done. And maybe perhaps in the other city, people don't have that much of confidence to approach the concerned police station. So these are, what I'm trying to say is that while POSH Act has been understood in most of the jurisdiction, yet people, the number of cases being handled varies from high courts to high courts. Even in Supreme Court also, I will not go in detail because there are some sensitive cases being handled. What I found was that this particularly confined to lawyers' community. So there is a big responsibility on the Bar Council, Delhi Bar Association, to see that the redressal mechanism is properly put in place and the mechanism is indeed made functional, and to get a confidence of the people, obviously, it has to be more transparent, speedy. These are not, of course, very easy things as anybody can say. These are as perceptive issues. And one of the most important things I feel is this whole issue of gender sensitization, which the POSH Act acts to address through three aspects. Number one, prevention, prohibition, and redressal. Prevention is equally important. As I mentioned, we still live in a difficult, we have a society whose mindset has not changed much. There is need to sensitize the people that there are certain acts which are prohibited. There are certain acts which cannot be tolerated. And it is not, again I say, gender sensitization is not an easy process. It is a part of that upbringing, part of the community living, part of the society's perception about itself. Every community has its own perception. Every society has its own perception of looking at women, how they perceive. These are big challenges. It is not an easy task. Yet, there must be continuous attempt to sensitize as to the And that the bedrock, what would be the standard with obviously the constitutional standard, which has to be uniform for everybody, irrespective of the community, irrespective of the history, tradition, our societal values. Because only the constitutional value is that which is acceptable and which can provide an equal platform for all. I say so because India is such a huge country. I have come from the northeast. I have traveled various parts of the country. I have lived in different societies, though not very long, but experience how diverse the views are of society, of everything. Therefore, you can imagine the diverse views of women also. A society may think, well, women should do this. This is the best way a woman should behave in public, in private. You should wear this particular kind of dress. This is the most acceptable. Well, I cannot comment on that. But when it comes to the equality clause, we have to invoke the constitutional values, Article 14, Article 15, Article 19, 21, which will be the measure, the criteria on which basis our concepts, ideas about everything, including women, has to be tested. As I mentioned again, the three aspects of the Act: prevention, prohibition, and redressal. As far as prohibition is concerned, more or less, the law provides that what are those acts which are considered of an offensive nature, which needs to be prohibited. But what about this redressal mechanism? Well, again, law provides formation of ICC. Unfortunately, if we go beyond Indian judicial system, most of the public organization, forget the organization, states also, departments, they don't have this mechanism. In fact, there is a PIL pending in Supreme Court. We have sought for information as to how many departments has the ICC. Are they functional? They are in namesake. Because I am saying because these are a serious implication for the complainants. Because I mentioned again, it has been spoken by the speakers also, that one has to come forward and make the complaint. One should not shy off. But why do you make the complaint? Are you assured that your complaint will be treated with the promptness it deserves, or the effectiveness which is required to be done? There are issues. That is why the onus is more on us right now, as most of the high courts have already embarked upon this exercise, to lay that, to lead the path. Therefore, it is also equally important that those who are the helm of affairs, especially implementation of the Act, they must themselves believe. This is an act is not merely a semi kind of criminal kind of act. It is something, as mentioned earlier also, it is transactional. It is a multi-layered act, not involving certain prohibitive acts, but involving our cultural attitude, our mindset, our approach towards the other gender. From that point of view, those who are tasked to implement this act needs to convince themselves. If you take it very lightly, obviously, your complaint is going to be not taken seriously. A doctor who treats must believe in the system And a doctor who prescribes his medicine must also believe in the efficacy of the medicine. Those members of the ICC, they must genuinely believe in the efficacy of the system. Only then we will be able to pursue those matters, consider those complaints in a manner it is expected to be done, which will only create a confidence, because without a confidence, because the entire system, as we all talk about as members of the judiciary, the strength of the Indian judiciary lies in the confidence reposed by the people. The same standard, same logic. There must be full confidence of the victims in this ICC. How do you ensure that confidence level? Is a very big challenge before us. As also mentioned, again, one of the greatest challenges is a deep-rooted cultural resistance in acknowledging certain acts as sexual harassment. In fact, many organizations see this complaint of sexual harassment as a threat to their reputation, rather than providing opportunities of growth to his employees. The stigma that the complainants endure in the frequent dismissal of inappropriate behavior as mere joking, light-hearted banter, and the power dynamics between men and women in workplaces contribute greatly to the culture of silence and fear. This is something which has to be addressed at the institutional level. And as far as male are concerned, obviously it is important to understand what makes a female counterpart uncomfortable, either with the use of certain words or the acts. We have to learn to respect any discomfort expressed by the women by resorting to appropriate behavior, which may include maintaining the appropriate physical distance, avoiding using certain words and expressions, and certain, of course, which has been already clearly mentioned in the Act. It is also equally important for menfolk to extend their help and cooperation to the women whenever they face any such kind of inappropriate behavior from the menfolk. I would say that not only cooperation, but an empathetic attitude. Certainly not sympathy, because what women requires is not an act of charity, but it is our solemn obligation for all of us to ensure the dignity of women. Similarly, women obviously has to come forward without any hesitation, report without the fear of being stigmatized, as the Act itself provides sufficient safeguards. Therefore, these are areas of concern. How to make women come forward? Because unless the complaint is forthcoming, how do we address? How and why should a woman come forward unless she has the confidence in the system? How the confidence will be generated? Only by the act of those who are in helm of affairs. Therefore, this is a very, what I would say, complex relationship, not only touching upon the legal knowledge of provision, but understanding human psychology. That is why it is important also that our idea is not to take to the the logical end of penalizing somebody. Because this can act for both the victim as well as the accused, perpetrator of such offensive act in a serious social spotlight. See, something both want to avoid. Nobody wants to highlight the kind of experiences she has undergone. At the same time, the perpetrator also would not like it to be made public. Therefore, the anonymity, the confidentiality, maintaining of confidentiality is another very important aspect which we must all be concerned of. It is in that context that today's program, launching of this portal, I feel is very, very significant. First of all, as mentioned also, you can lodge your complaint from your private arena without being seen in public place that yes, he is going to the office or the ICC committee office to complain. The anonymity is assured. It is so important. And of course, one can see from this portal also what action has been taken. I can understand that the details may not be provided, but the steps being taken will be certainly reflected. And I also mentioned by other speakers also, the speedy resolution is very important. That also will be reflected. Personally, I feel that yes, before we go, as mentioned by Dr. Upadhyay also, that conciliation is something very important. Otherwise, if you go whole hog, full hog, like a trial, this is going to hurt both the sides. It's not a very pleasant exercise. Therefore, in my view, then all attempts must be made to reconcile if possible, to bring about a settlement, and make the perpetrator of such an offensive act understand that this is something not to be repeated. We are not interested in penalizing as such, but bring about a change that this should not be done. Is not something which inhibits the potential of another person. And we have a responsibility to see that we do not create such an environment. This is my personal perception, of course. Of course, there are allegations also that fear, apprehension that it may be misused. There is a possibility, and it has happened. Our past experience shows when Dowry Prohibition Act was introduced. I remember in 80s when we were students, we hear all this every day in newspaper. We see these burning cases, which prompted the legislation to enact this Dowry Prohibition Act. Yes, it has reduced to a great extent, but at the same time we see false allegations being made. Same with DV case also, domestic violence also. That's what we see from experience, from the cases we see. So this is something which we have to be careful. Making false allegation is equally dangerous, which will compromise with the system. This is something which we have to take care. As I mentioned earlier also, that there are very few high courts we are actively engaged in this redressal mechanism, and Delhi High Court remains, as from my information which I received, has done exceedingly well, just like we have done in the movement for strengthening the movement mediation. Delhi High Court has done wonderful. Arbitration, we are leading also. There are other high courts, so please don't mind that other high courts have not done. Yes, so the Delhi High Court is uniquely placed, being the capital of India, to lead it. And with this Small step it may appear to be, but certainly it will go a long run in strengthening this movement for making workplace a safe environment where women, which are increasingly coming in public sphere, will have the confidence, will get a necessary impetus, which will not come in the way of their creativity in participating in a nation building exercise which is being undertaken.